in 2011, and so I'm now in my third year. Excuse me. And basically I follow the issues of the right to peaceful assembly and the right to association. For me, the biggest issue in terms of assembly, and assembly is big, assembly is a big thing, including what we're doing here is a peaceful assembly, but the critical part of it is peaceful. Not unlawful, but peaceful. Because there are many, many countries and many states that put laws to try and make a peaceful gathering unlawful. So my focus is very much on what international law says is peaceful. Now, there are many arguments that are thrown out around peaceful assemblies. Very often you hear governments saying that we don't want to authorize an assembly because it is anti-government, it's about an issue we don't like, etc., etc. Again, the standard is very clear. It does not matter what the content of the protest is. It does not matter what the content of the gathering and assembly is. It's what's most important is that it's peaceful and that it's what people want to do. And it doesn't matter whether it's 10 people or 50,000 people. As long as there's no hate, there's no incitement to violence and no violence, then the state should authorize it. That's the position of international law, and that's a position that I push. So if indeed there is violence, then I think it's upon the state and the police to remove the person who is violent and let the protest go on. It is not to stop the protest to say that because violence has happened, let's stop it all entirely. No, the state has the duty to stop that person who's violent and let the protest go on. Similarly, when you talk about peaceful assembly, it is the intention and the original, it's the issue of the intent that's important. So that you cannot say that we fear a protest will be violent, therefore we won't allow it. If the organizers say that we are doing a peaceful assembly, then they should be allowed to hold that assembly. And that is the key issue. And the state has the duty to then facilitate, first of all, to facilitate that assembly, and secondly, to then ensure there is law and order. Not law and order first and then facilitation. Let's make it clear. The state's duty is to facilitate the assembly, and then in case there's a breach of law or there's violence, to then bring in law and order, not the reverse. The second thing in which I've been pushing quite strongly is the question of what we call sectoral equity. That the same way the state treats pro-government assemblies, pro-government gatherings, demonstrations, is absolutely the same way it should treat those it does not like. Because the freedoms of assembly and the freedoms of association are not about whether I like it or I don't like it. That's not what it's about. You don't have to like it. It's what is that people want to go out, give them the space to go out. And actually, it is indeed in the interest of the state to let people come out, let people protest. Because at the end of the day, how will the state know what people think unless they're allowed to come out? Sometimes states think that they can use fear and silence everybody, and they think that way then they can move an issue. But as we know, the human spirit and human beings are such that they will always keep agitating in one way or the other to try and get the issues out. So it's actually the interest of the state to know what people are asking for, what people are demanding, what they are unhappy about, and then they can deal with it. And secondly as well is that it's very, very clear that if you close the avenue of peaceful protest, who knows what people are going to do afterwards? So it's actually much more better for a state, for a government, for a regime to allow people to speak, to allow people to come out, to allow people to be there, because we don't want to go to the next steps when peaceful protests are not allowed. I think that's the most important thing I wanted to say today. And let me also say this. I have been in protests many times, and I have been accused of being an agent of somebody. You know, when you're in a protest, and when you've got tanks and policemen with tear gas arranged at you, I know for a fact that there's not any amount of money that can be paid to somebody to go there and risk their lives. Because when you know the state and the police can kill you, they can throw tear gas at you, you can be hospitalized, I don't think anybody would go there and say, I'm willing to risk this for money. So yes, that will come out. I know that's the propaganda that comes out, but I would urge you, It is your right. Exercise your rights. But again, do so peacefully, but also do so strategically. This is the long haul. You're not doing this for a short term. So sometimes you need to figure out how strategic you can be. But it's your task. What we can do from where I sit is perhaps support you when we can, issue a few statements, do what we can from the outside. But the cause that's going on in Venezuela is a Venezuelan cause. The Americans won't solve it, the Russians won't solve it, Chinese won't solve it, the Cubans won't solve it. It will be solved by Venezuelans. And that is your task. And yes, there will be debate, there will be abuse and other things. But it's up to you to enter into this contestation of ideas. Because that's what you want to do. You want to have a fair contestation, not of might, but of right. But too often in our world, we're seeing might being overcoming right. And our challenge, the challenge of our times, is to make sure that we use right as opposed to might. And that's why I would like to live with you today. Hopefully, as I said, I want to learn. I have asked quite a few times to visit Venezuela on an official visit. The government has never said anything. It doesn't even respond. I will keep asking them, and I'll keep asking them because it's the right thing to do. And maybe one day, who knows, one day they may agree. But I'll keep asking and keep hopeful, because I think it is because they have themselves. Remember, it's one thing. The government of Venezuela signed and ratified the International Convention on Civil and Political Rights. It signed and ratified the International Convention on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights. Nobody forced them to do so. It was a voluntary decision they made to be part of the international community. Now, our job, all of us, and my job, is to try and remind them consistently that this is your obligation under the law. This is what you signed. So I'll remind you, I'll be kind to you, I'll be as polite as I can, but I think it's your obligation because nobody forced you to do this. And once you sign on to these documents, once you sign on to this international law, then you're bound by it. You cannot decide to pick and choose. And yes, of course we can't do anything. We can't force them, but we can keep on reminding them and use the power of morality on these issues as much as we can. But it is your struggle. It's not mine. It is your struggle as Venezuelans. I know it's been a long struggle. I don't know whether you're right or you're wrong, and that's really up to you all as Venezuelans to sort out. But I know, and I will defend your right to protest on whatever issue it is, as long as it's peaceful, and as long as it is a real issue. It's up to you. As long as not inciting people to violence, it doesn't matter what the content is. That is your right. And as much as the government itself has a right to organize its own protest in support of itself, that's fine. That's fine. As long as they're peaceful. Because the whole idea of human rights is to allow people to come together and have that contestation peacefully, so that ideas can sell and see which idea is stronger. So I would like to leave you with that. And if there's anything, again, I know I'm in contact with a lot of Venezuelans. I'm getting a lot of pressure on Venezuela. It keeps coming on, and I appreciate that. When Carlos Lanta's coming to Boston, he didn't even ask me what I'm coming to do. He says, you're coming to this forum on Venezuela. I had no choice on the matter, but I'm glad I did. I'm very happy to be here, and I think it's something that I do as much as I can. So whatever I can do with you all, let me know. But this is your struggle. I want to know more about it because there is a lot of issues coming out. I have spoken, I and a number of special rapporteurs have done statements on Venezuela showing our concern. I've covered Venezuela in a lot of my reports. I will keep trying to do that, and I'll keep a close eye on Venezuela as much as I can. But I know what I would like to do most is get an invitation from the government to visit. So if anybody here has any good contacts with the government and knows how to get them to invite me, please use those contacts, I know, and see what we can do. Thank you very much. There's one more thing I want to say. I mean, I caught the point that they said about the tear gas that's being used, or the massive amounts of tear gas. I don't know if you followed the case of Bahrain recently, and how the Bahrainians have forced the Republic of Korea to cancel an export license of tear gas to Bahrain. So I'm sure you can find out who manufactures that tear gas, and then link up, if it's a country outside of Venezuela, link up to them and see if you can force the citizens of that country to put pressure on them not to export more tear gas. In Venezuela, in Bahrain, it was they found that the Republic of Korea, a company from Korea, was going to export 3 million tear gas canisters to Bahrain. There is 650,000 people in Bahrain, and they don't all protest. So you imagine how many they were going to use on the people of Bahrain. So they managed to then to link up with groups in Bahrain, and they put massive pressure on the government in Korea, and eventually the company did not export that tear gas. Of course, the government then is looking for another place to buy them, but that's part of the job. Making it harder for governments to get these things, so you know where it is. And like actually, this is a thing that we're going to be looking at in the next few years, to look at the best practices in terms of protecting human rights in protests. But thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.